Hello, welcome to Microsoft Exchange Community Technical Airlift. It's fantastic to be back at MEC. We are so glad that you could join us. We have attendees from more than 70 countries, and we appreciate this opportunity to help you get the most from Exchange. And we are here to talk and learn about Exchange, Exchange Server, Exchange Online, and Exchange Hybrid. There's a great lineup of sessions from our engineering teams, Exchange MVPs, and other community members. And that is what this is all about, connecting with the Exchange community. It's been one of the most active technical communities, some of whom have been Exchange MVP for decades. Now, Microsoft MVPs have a very strong relationship with Microsoft. They are some of our most vocal community members, and they provide an instrumental voice in the future product planning. So we are thankful to have many Exchange MVPs and MEC sharing their expertise. MEC is also about security. Organizations are thinking about how to maintain their cloud services or move to the cloud faster, and embracing these services that give them more value and more protection than ever before. Services that protect all of Office 365 against advanced threats such as phishing and corporate email compromise, which is one of the most financially damaging online cybercrimes. And for our on-premises customers, you also need to be vigilant. Exchange servers often contain the most sensitive corporate data, and they host a company address book, all of which is really critical to protect. And so finally, MEC is about modernizing your infrastructure, which means leveraging new technologies and capabilities in the cloud and updating your own premises deployments. It means updating or eliminating legacy apps and devices that use basic authentication and moving on to modern auth. It also means moving off servers that run on Exchange Server 2013 or earlier. So if you run on-premises Exchange servers, we really want to help you move to Exchange 2019 now. Now, modernization also means updating services and applications to use the Graph APIs instead of legacy APIs such as Exchange Web Services. Now, over the next 2 days, we will share exciting investments and talk about how you can engage with the Exchange community, improve your security posture, and modernize your Exchange infrastructure. We are incredibly excited to bring back MEC, and we are so thrilled that you could join us. Thanks for being here and your support of Microsoft Exchange. And now, I would like to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Perry Clarke, who will share his thoughts on what is coming next for Exchange.
Thanks, Rajesh. That was kind of a cool backdrop for him. It's one of our civil defense operations centers. Well, hello everybody. Today, apparently, there are thousands of people joining us from around the world, which is pretty cool. The last time we came together was in Austin in 2014, and I'm really thrilled to have the opportunity to meet with you today. I was there in Austin, and it was pretty cool. Things like Squeaky Lobster were hanging around, and although we don't have one of those today, I did pull out my trusty Exchange MVP pillow with some very cool people on it, like Paul Robichaud and Tony Redmond that I got back then. And it's always been a comfort because the partnership with the entire Exchange community has been vital, and Exchange MVPs are one big part of that, and boy, have they put me through the ringer in some places over my time at Microsoft. Being with us on this journey and being part of the community, which has always been so integral to the successful Exchange product. You know, there's so many points in the history of Exchange in which I knew we were kind of on the right track because the MVPs were like halls in front of them and just put us through the ringer about what we're doing. Things like JBOD or shared nothing clustering or moving to the cloud. You know, that was a very interesting topic at one point. By the way, I'm talking to Jared Spataro, key partner on Exchange and Office 365. And first of all, we're going to run through some cool updates that are coming up, and then we're going to talk about the importance of getting modern and secure, and then we're going to turn the mic over to you to ask questions and share ideas with Jared and me. Okay, some news. First, we're announcing that our cross-tenant mailbox and OneDrive user migration will move out of public preview and become generally available on November the 1st. This is really important for customers in mergers or divestitures that need the ability to move a user's Exchange Online mailbox and OneDrive files into a new tenant. And this stuff happens all the time, and Paul Lormer is going to be very happy when this gets out there. Next, we're in private preview of our software update dashboard in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center for Exchange hybrid customers. This puts the important information into one easy view to show you which servers need updates, which servers are in unsupported states, and which servers are end of life. We're looking into expanding the private preview, and eventually we'll move into public preview where all Exchange hybrid customers can try it out. So stay tuned. Finally, I'd like to announce that we are now supporting Exchange Server in Windows Server 22 Active Directory environments. With this announcement, all versions of Exchange Server support Windows Server 2022 AD environments, which unblocks AD upgrades for customers who run Exchange on premises. We have a few breakout and Ask the Expert sessions that will walk you through all of this and more. Okay, why modern? With that bit of good news, I wanted to walk you through why it's important to get modern and update your Exchange infrastructure, on-premises and cloud. There are a few key value props or reasons to make the move. We've got a fantastic modern programming model. It comes with a modern auth story, and it leads to a better permission story across the board. My first call for action for all of you is to make sure you finally moved away from basic auth use. For Exchange Online, the deadline is next month. Over the last couple of years, we've gone from hundreds of millions of customers to now just a few still using basic auth. Make sure you are taking this important step to ensure secure access to your service. Be sure to check out the breakout session on the basic auth deprecation, and there are 2 Ask the Expert sessions to help you move to modern auth today. The benefit to your app is best-of-breed support and improved security. We've got customers like Baylor Scott and White Health that have successfully modernized their applications. And in their business, they run many applications to support their mission in healthcare. For them, modernizing was a critical component in maintaining the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of patient information and the life-saving services they provide. Security is one of the key areas we can address more effectively when you modernize your API use and move from Exchange Web Services, EWS APIs, to Graph APIs. You know, I'm old enough to remember when EWS was the new cool thing on the block. But, you know, we're a learning culture at Microsoft, and we've learned a lot over the decades, and it's now time to move to Graph APIs and from Exchange Web Service applications and app registrations to an application access policy model. By upgrading now, it will ensure you will have the richest feature set, the highest security, and the best manageability. And in the future, you'll more easily be able to move to upgrades. Now, if you're an on-prem customer, we see about 25% of our on-prem install base is on Exchange 2013. This is a product that we started planning almost a decade and a half ago, roughly about the time my daughter, who just went to high school, was born. So, you know, it's been a while. And we want to remind you that we're now approaching end of life on that product. So now is the time to move to Exchange 2019. This version is the most robust offering, but you can also consider if now is the right time for you to make the move to the cloud. The benefit includes lower total cost of ownership, as well as better security, performance, and fantastic clients. Okay, finally, I really want to share my perspectives on where we're going with security. We want our customers to have the best experience, greatest innovation and functionality with the most secure email service on the cloud and on-prem. If you're still using Exchange Server on-prem, besides recommending you move to the cloud, which I think is a fantastic option for almost everybody, I also want you to know that we're actively investing in keeping Exchange on-prem at the highest security standards. We continue to work closely with this community, such as responding to the Hafnium attacks, where we spent a lot of time on in 2021. I can still remember the call from Rajesh while I was on a ski lift with my daughter that kicked that one off. To protect our customers, we released out-of-band security updates along with one-click migration tools that later became part of the Exchange Server as the emergency mitigation service. There's a lot of interesting work that went into that. We added AMSI integration in June 2021 CU and enabled the hybrid management PowerShell module to work with the MFA-enabled admin accounts. And released security updates in April, May, July, October, and November of 2021, and in January, March, May, and August of this year, along with support for Windows Extended Protection. We also updated our security update packaging to make installing SUs much easier. We strongly believe that close partnerships with security researchers help make customers more secure. So we also launched a security vulnerability bounty program for Exchange Server and other server products via the Microsoft Applications and On-Premises Servers Bounty Program. Since we added the Office servers to the bounty program, we've received more than 50 reports from multiple researchers, which resulted in 8 cases in scope for bounty awards for Exchange Server, SharePoint Server, and Skype for Business Server. Across all Office servers, we paid out more than $125,000 in bounty awards. Maybe not quite like processing lithium as a way to riches, but you know, there's some opportunity there. We all know that security is about getting current and staying current. And if you're running on-prem, it can be harder to do. So we're looking at ways to make that easier for you. Increasingly leveraging the latest security and compliance capabilities becomes easier, faster when you're in the cloud. So let's work together to get modern and stay secure. Thank you. Now, I'd really like to welcome Jared Spataro, our CVP of Modern Work.
Great to be here. Very, very nice to be here. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining.
You know, Perry invited me to do this work, and it's been very exciting to be a part of MEC as we bring it back. It's been a while, since 2014, as he mentioned, all the way back in Austin, and here we are on a different day. There are more than 4,000 people that are registered for this Geek Out with Perry session, and I was just thrilled to be able to be a part of it. So we're going to start with some questions and answers. I think about what Perry just announced, think about where we're headed, There are lots of questions about where we're headed with Exchange, and in particular, there are some questions as we looked at what was coming from the community about Exchange Server. And we'll actually get kicked off with one of those, Perry, for you. This is one that we want to just use to kind of set the foundation as we think about how we are going to go forward with Exchange Server. So it says this: the Exchange Server roadmap announcement said that you've moved to a new release date for the next version of Exchange Server to the second half of 2025. And so we made that announcement a few months ago. This means that the soonest it can be released is July 1st, 2025, which is only 105 days before the end of support for Exchange Server 2016 and Exchange Server 2019. And the big question is this: why so little time between the release of the next version and the end of support for Exchange 2016 and 2019? I'll add this to the question: what does this imply for the way that we're thinking about this next version of Exchange Server?
Well, I think the important thing is to try and make it dramatically easier for people to stay on the treadmill. So the primary thing here is when you make this transition from then on, updates and upgrades are going to be dramatically easier. And 2019 really is your gateway to that. So the first thing is now get on 2019. Yes, 2013, 2016, they're end of life. You need to move on for a number of reasons anyway, and that's the key thing. If you get onto 2019, you've got lots of time to then get prepared, and the next step is much more straightforward.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think that's the really important big message here is, what do you do if you're on-prem? And we'll talk a little bit more about our commitment to on-prem in this next question, but what do? You get on 2019, as Perry is saying. That's the most important thing. In fact, in that same announcement that we made, we talked about the idea that we're guaranteeing that you can actually do from 2019 an in-place upgrade to the next version of Exchange. And so we want to make sure that those upgrades and updates are much easier than they've ever been before. Not these big things that you have to prepare for, but instead kind of a much smoother process.
Yeah. You know, it's kind of ironic because I was one of the guys behind it. 2017 was when, 2007, sir, when we were making the move to 32 bits. 264 bits, and making the call that we weren't going to do an in-place upgrade at all. But world changes, and this is, I think, the right thing for our customers.
You know, I think what happened is the pillow that Perry now sleeps with, you know, from 2014 that has these MVPs, because he had it close to his head, it really changed his mindset about those in-place upgrades. And so we've got now a champion of in-place upgrades after all these years. All right, next question. As we think about Exchange on-prem, this is one that comes up very often for us, is when the next version of Exchange Server moves to the modern lifecycle policy, Microsoft must provide a minimum of 12 months notification prior to ending support for that version. But of course, 12 months is shorter than we have done it with our traditional policy. So the big question on this one is, can Microsoft commit to supporting Exchange Server at least until a specific date? And Perry, you and I talked about, I'll take the first whack at this one.
Sure.
You know, as we think about Exchange Server, first I just want to back up for a moment and make sure that the community understands this one thing. We are committed to our Exchange on-prem customers and to supporting you. I like the language that Perry used just a few minutes ago. Of course, we want everybody to move to the cloud. You will always hear that from us. The first thing we'll say is, hey, have you moved to the cloud? Can you move to the cloud? Why can't you move to the cloud? That's really important to us. But we do recognize that there are some scenarios in which you can't, or you really feel like it's important for you to be on-prem. So the wording that we put in the blog post, if you go back and look at it, is that we'll continue to produce and support Exchange Server on-prem as long as there's substantive market demand. And people have asked us, what in the world does that mean? It doesn't mean as long as we make enough money from it. So this has nothing to do with kind of our revenue stream associated with it. We'll look at the market and try and understand those needs. Now, there is so much more we can do as people move to the cloud, you know, whether it's security or additional features. I mean, we are very convinced. You're talking to two guys who are convinced. But again, we recognize that, at least for the time being and for the foreseeable future, that there are some cases where people will need to stay on-prem. We are committed to you, and we pride ourselves, in fact, on the fact that we won't leave that base behind. So that's where we are right now. We're not offering a date simply because we don't know ourselves. Perry and I are always in meetings where we talk about this, and we're evaluating that substantive market demand.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think one of the things I'm most proud about Microsoft is the degree to which we take customer trust seriously. And one of the things is making sure we support our customers through the whole life cycle and support them whether or not it makes economic sense. So you don't see us going crazy Eddie on killing off products right, left, and center. And I'm confident we're going to continue to make sure that we support the customers that need that support for as long as they need it.
quote of the day right there. We're not going to go crazy, Eddie. I'll remember that. I'll remember that. Okay, now we're going to go to some questions from the community. Again, just for the moment, it's a fantastic moment to pause. Thank you for joining us here in this session. Thank you for joining us this week. Again, for just this session, Geeking Out with Perry, 4,000 people registered. Let's go to the community for some questions. The first one comes from a member of the community who asked this: can we please get more updated on Exchange Modern Hybrid? We really need more updates to remote constraints for Modern Hybrid, as many security-conscious customers don't want Classic Hybrid. And then one last part to this, in particular, can we fix Hybrid Modern authentication is not supported with the Hybrid Agent, and fix Teams calendaring with Modern Hybrid Agent? So some very specific questions here related to Exchange Modern Hybrid. I think I'm going straight to Geeking Out with Perry for this one.
Yes, they are quite specific. But first of all, I mean, this is some great feedback hiding in the cloak of a question, which we appreciate it. This is stuff that we're taking a hard look at. So I'm expecting us to improve the story here quite a bit.
Excellent. And I have not looked at the schedule to see where this would land in terms of the sessions, but just know that the sessions and the folks presenting the sessions are very much looking forward to making sure that they get feedback and questions from you. So there might be a place where that lands a little bit better. A question from Steve is as follows: when is MEC coming back in person? This is great, but it's a far cry from in-person networking, and ain't that the truth? Perry, what's your prediction on when we're coming back in Prague? I have a little bit of inside knowledge, so we'll see.
Oh, I don't have the inside knowledge, but this is a riff for me, which is the ability to work remotely has been a huge game changer for Microsoft. Our ability to build a global team has really been something that has been a game changer for us. The things we've learned over the last few years. But also, at the same time, one of the things we learned is the importance of investing in getting people together physically, especially when your community, like the Exchange team, is global, and the whole Exchange community is global. So I'm a big fan of making that investment and get people together regularly. If not, invest, it's not necessarily the case we need to invest in travel every single day, but I think it would be great for us to get this together. So you've got some inside info?
All right. Well, I like where Perry's going. We'll have our first in-person Microsoft event kind of, en masse next month in October for Ignite. It's not huge. We'll have a couple thousand people here in Seattle. That'll be us kind of dipping our toe into the water here as we ease out of the pandemic. And you can expect, at least for Microsoft, as you think about all of our events going forward, that we'd like to add in-person components to them. I second what Perry says. We recognize that there's such a tremendous benefit to what we can do in connecting from all over the world. In fact, for this session, as an example, our first attendee was from Finland, Tommy from Finland. Thank you, Tommy, for joining us. My daughter happens to live in Helsinki right now. So it's great that we can get together without that travel. But we do recognize that networking and getting together face-to-face is really important. So just know that from the Microsoft event perspective, as we look across these events, we want to make sure that there are events out there that we can get to. And whether that's events that Microsoft will sponsor ourselves or these community events that are so important, those will both be an important part of what we do. All right, we're going to head back to some of the questions here. One of the questions that we got was about basic auth. I know that this comes up quite a bit as we are nearing this deadline in October of actually shutting basic auth off. And one of the questions is simply this: how come some customers got a 3-month extension on their basic auth usage and will have it available after December 31st and until March 31st? I think that's a great community question of, what's going on here, Perry? What's that all about?
Yeah, that's actually a conversation I had with my team at the time. It's just, really? But again, as we talked about, we're deeply committed to supporting our customers, and when they've got absolutely ironclad issues that they need to deal with, we're going to work to make sure we're as flexible as possible. But every single one of them made a very hard commitment to get the work done, and we expect them to get off basic off a lot sooner than the deadline.
Yeah, great. Here's what from Perry, I think we can pick up a principle here, which is really important. This commitment to customers isn't just lip service. We hope you feel. That doesn't mean we don't make hard decisions. We do sometimes. But we also, I think, really listen to the community. Perry has meetings with his team. We have joint meetings of kind of the marketing org and how we think about the engineering org and bringing us together. And as we have the feedback, we're trying hard to listen to that and make sure that we understand your specific situation. So I think there's a principle there. Again, that doesn't mean we won't make tough decisions sometimes, but we are trying very hard to ensure that we aren't just moving unilaterally forward, especially in these types of technical decisions where we really need to think about different circumstances. All right, here's another one about basic auth. I think this is one that people have quite a bit of energy on. In addition to eventually blocking basic auth in Exchange Online, Microsoft is also changing the default behavior for the Microsoft 365 apps, so there's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, so that they block sign-in prompts when basic auth is used. Why does Microsoft have to block it? Why not just discourage its use? Why can't we be just a little bit softer on this one, Perry? What's our perspective?
Our perspective is we think that the basic auth is a huge problem from a security perspective. And we've been working at this for more than a decade, is to get past this. We think it is really important to get off this. Yeah, there are some places in which this is going to be a little painful. But the pain on the other side of the ledger is something you have to consider. The risks here are huge. And it's not just about any individual environment, but it's also what's happening to the whole estate. Because these systems are now pretty interconnected. I mean, that's the calculation that we're doing is what's the best for the whole community, what's best for each individual customer. And yeah, some of the stuff, it's now time, right? We're really signaling it's time.
I think if I do a little bit of a translation for you, what you heard from Coach Perry there is that pain is just weakness leaving the body. That's all it is. That, you know, as we look at the principle, I will say security is one of those things that is just super top of mind for us. Obviously, you know, no joke. We are very focused on that. And as we look at various aspects of the on-prem base and the on-prem technology, and just look at the technology set broadly, you know, security is going to be something that we will need to make some tough decisions for. So recognize that there will be some sacrifices, and honestly, you know, no joking, you know, be prepared for sometimes some pain as we make some of those sacrifices, trade-offs. All right, next one up is from Tim, and this question is, what is the best recommended hosted location for Exchange Online journal mailboxes? Perry, let's geek out for a second.
That is pretty good question there. Actually, you know, the answer almost certainly is it depends on a bunch of scenarios. So I would say go find one of the Ask Experts sessions and get that question and start walking through the kind of scenarios you're dealing with and what you want to use those journal mailboxes for. This is probably not without more detail on the scenarios. I wouldn't want to try and solve that one.
Yeah, fair enough. Might be hard without getting the specifics of the situation. It does remind me of another question that we had from the community, which is, hey, as you think about Exchange Online today, they were just kind of interested in I think a little bit of the behind the scenes. Is Exchange Online entirely in Azure right now? Is it on separate services, servers, or you know, where is it? You know, how is it run today?
There was a question which was, you know, when, you know, is Exchange still on, not on Azure? Everything about Exchange is on Azure. We deploy on top of a Azure network, Azure Active Directory. We use every single service I think Azure provides. We do build some interesting deep indexing technology for both search and AI on top of Azure, which is appropriate. But to be clear, our cloud story is one of the largest scale storage stories in the world, and it's all on Azure. No question about it.
Fantastic. That leads to another question here coming from the community this morning, which is about this next generation version of Exchange Server. Again, remember this, we will release in the second half of 2025. The question from Jacob is this: will that server fundamentally change the architecture of Exchange? And I think that's an important question as they think about how do I do the upgrade? You know, what will I need? Where's all this going? So, Perry.
And I think also there was like a question about where's the future and what's our thinking about architecture in general. Mm-hmm. So no, I would say it's not fundamentally changing the fundamental architecture like some of the things that we've done in the past. But in many ways, the very core part of the Exchange architecture was pretty brilliantly durable over time. There's a bunch of different scenarios we've applied it to, and it is the underpinning of, at that same architecture, is the underpinning of our core Microsoft Graph through something internally we call Substrate, which is basically Exchange Server.
Little known fact right there.
Yes. And it's, first of all, it's based on this idea of partitioning based on, intelligent partitioning of a very large scale graph, billions of shards across every single continent on the planet, and pulling that together into one massive graph that can put each individual, each group, each company at the center of their own little universe, and allow us to look left to right across all of the data that people need, so we can have a comprehensive, complete view of each individual and help them do the work that they need to get done. So that concept at the core is the same core architecture that we see in Exchange. As we're building that out, we're working very hard to keep the on-prem version as close as possible to the cloud stuff. But there are a set of things that are increasingly tough to deliver on the on-premises world. The scale with which AI is being applied and the scope of investments there and the speed with which you need to be able to roll out new models to the system and apply it to the data sets makes it really tough to match some of the core functionality there. So what's interesting is that we're seeing this very tough challenge of making sure that we stay coherent between the cloud and on-premise stuff, which is one of our core architectural principles over the last few years. So we're going to be very conservative on making big changes in the on-premises world. The fundamental nuggets we're talking about is good, and we're waiting, but we're always looking at the hardware trends, because that is usually one of the things that really sparks, a rethink when the size of disks got very large and their speeds got small. We had to come up with a different strategy for how to deal with that. When the fundamental characteristics of the networks changed, we could consolidate servers and move from a very local model to a very centralized model. So those are the kinds of shifts in the underlying technology that drives a reassessment of how we get this stuff done. So we're looking carefully. It's interesting that a lot of those things come down to ratios, and while, say, moving away completely from spinning disks is something that we're constantly looking at, it still looks like that ratio between the cost of SSD to go purely and the cost of spinning metal, that ratio doesn't change it hasn't been changing all that quickly. So as people have grown the amount of data they want to work with, the scale point is still fairly solid. That may change, and it may change very rapidly. And when it does, you'll see us respond pretty quickly in terms of new deployment models and new ways of getting the servers built out there.
Great insight, really great insight. One little known fact that I'll just pick up on in Perry's answer too there is the substrate. He used that word, what we today call externally often the Microsoft Graph, really built on kind of this Exchange technology that is doing amazing things for us. As you think about what we're going to be able to do with AI, reasoning across all this data, it's the ability of Microsoft 365 to, at scale, reason across so much information in such a sophisticated way. So, a big thank you to the
because that is the big shift in the world we're facing right now. Like if there's something substantive, and that's the place where the hardware and the software technology is just changing so rapidly. The speed with which your ability to get very large models developed, and then the ability to serve those large models cost effectively is changing rapidly. And the other key thing is that AI tech is very important, but without a massive data set to work on top of, you're not going to get a lot of insight out of it. If you think about our mission is to provide assistance to people, if you think about, people really value, human assistants, right? It's like one of the things it's just interesting to watch is when somebody gets a human being that can manage their calendar, they love it,
Yes.
right? But when you get an assistant on day one, they may have gone to, have multiple degrees. They certainly are sentient creatures. They certainly understand your language completely. And yet, on day one, they're kind of useless.
Yeah.
Because you have to teach them something about you
absolutely.
and what you want to work on. The opportunity we've got is make sure that your data is completely accessible so that AI can have that left to right view about you, and on day one and every day have sort of a complete understanding of you. And that's the interesting challenge that we're working through, is how do we do that at scale and handle both the individual and the group, the team, and the whole company's perspective on that. And then in many cases, associations of companies or tenants that people want to pull together so that we can create a cohesive system that allows you to think left to right, whether or not you're the CEO or you're the new hire straight out of college.
Yeah, another great reason to be in the cloud,
Yep.
because you have some of these benefits. All right, let's take another question here from the community. This one is from Nick, talking about roaming Outlook signatures. He says, when will we be able to manage roaming Outlook signatures for our employees? And I think we have some good news here. So, Perry.
Yes, okay. Roaming Outlook. Sorry, I've completely drawn a blank on this one. Do you?
I got it. Don't
All
worry.
right.
I've got it. It turns out Outlook desktop cloud signatures are expected to G8 next month, which is a part of the Microsoft 365 roadmap. So we're really excited about that. And if you want to test this now, let's see, again, this was Nick. You can put yourself on the beta channel, which is at 100% rollout. And the current channel preview is now at 50% rollout. So great feature, great question, great feature, coming to you soon. And it's just one example, I think, as we continue to move these things to the cloud. I know I appreciate, the things that are moving to the cloud, both from the client and the server. Just recently, I noticed that, for instance, something as simple as delay send, that might have been there for a while, but I've used that oftentimes just with Outlook. All those settings have now moved to the cloud, and that changes my email habits, especially on the weekend, because I can delay send. All right, from Raphael, this is a good one. A lot of times when I talk to Exchange customers, what I hear from them is, hey, we actually want to move to the cloud. Like, it's our desire to move to the cloud, but we have some things that are holding us back. And Raphael hits one of these. He says this: the only reason we keep our old Exchange 2013 servers running is because we have a lot of legacy on-prem using Exchange to relay notifications. I've explored the other Exchange Online native email relay options, but they don't all fit our needs, either due to Exchange Online sending limits or other related to the old apps that we have. Can you build a simplified Exchange server role for SMTP relay specifically? So here's a request, maybe a ask. What would you say, Perry?
No, actually, this is a key thing. Is one of the things we've been all the work that we did on the security issues that we're seeing on the last year and a half, 2 years. One of the things that was surprising was the degree to which there was a set of servers in even very large companies that were just not getting updated, right? Mm-hmm. We'd issue stuff and nothing would happen. We go, what's going on? We'd see all these tenants. So we said, okay, there's something about stuff that's going on that we don't understand. And basically when we started looking at it, we were like, okay, it's clear that people are using Exchange Server at these companies not for their core email, mm-hmm. right?
Something else is happening.
And something else is going on, and there's all these roles that built up. And often when we start going, like having conversations with people, well, what's going on? The people that we know are responsible for the core email servers, like, what are you talking about? I'm fully up to date. We're like, well, no, actually, your company's got publicly facing servers that have got an Exchange signature on top of them, and they're completely out of date. And they're like, well, we don't know them. And really, it turns out there's a whole set of roles out there that we think are things that are, in fact, hidden demand for us to do. And we're taking a hard look at the best way to solve that. Some of these things, I think, are going to be things that we're just going to include in a service that you can use with your on-premise deployment and solve that way. And other places, can we turn around and repackage that functionality as a simplified server? It's definitely stuff that we're looking at doing.
Fantastic. Great feedback. Really good feedback. Another one here, this time from Scott. When do we think Exchange Hybrid will be decoupled from Azure AD Hybrid? So talking about the topology there. Exchange Hybrid decoupling from Azure AD Hybrid. If an organization wants to go to full Exchange Online, they're still limited by this architecture. Is that something we'll ever move away from, or is that kind of?
Oh, I think so. I think there's some simplification work that we need to get done, especially as the estate gets more and more. There's a clear set of people that are fully online. Yeah, there's definitely some things there where we're working hard on simplifying.
Great. All right, from Andres, you mentioned, I think if I picked it up correctly, Perry, that you were, well, maybe we'll call you the father of EWS.
No. That would be Harvinder Bela.
Okay, Harv.
And Jason Henderson.
How long will EWS live on? What's your prediction for that, or any insight you could give us even?
Well, there's two answers to that. There's the optimistic answer. We've got a plan and we're moving, and people have got plans that possibly a few more years and we'll be like, we'll have gotten the shift done. But then you look at things like basic auth and you go, well,
it took a while.
It took a while. We've been working on that for a long time. The world that we live in is large. People have complex scenarios to deal with. It is hard for us to understand all of the reasons people are doing what they're doing. So my suspicion is it's going to be a long time where it's going to live on in some form. Again, we're dedicated to making sure we have a thesis about where we want to go, that we have a North Star, we communicate that, and then when that thesis runs up against the hard realities of the real world, we learn from that, we have those conversations, and we adjust the path accordingly. EWS has got this thing that customers built an incredible amount of stuff on top of. So that estate is something it's got to be supported for the long haul as far as it's necessary. At the same time, there are very good reasons to move on. We've seen the examples of people that have not gone through this transition and tried to do it too quickly, and it forces customers to make very bad decisions. We're not going to do that.
Excellent. Yeah, I'll just add for a moment. Again, we're going back to many of the same refrains here, but when you hear us talk about customer commitment, we're really talking about a partnership. We are very committed to being the best partner you could have in this space, and in particular making sure that your mail deployment as you run Exchange is safe, secure, it's trusted, that you can trust us. Now again, that means that we have our theses, our feelings about where we think the world is going or should go. We will prioritize security above everything else. That's really important, and obviously over the last couple of years that's become even more important with the way things have changed. But we will listen very carefully, and so one of the things that I think is a hallmark of Microsoft, and particularly in this space, is trying to make sure we are working with the community, developing the community, listening to the community, and helping you move forward at a pace that's right for you. That doesn't mean we're not going to be giving you some sometimes gentle pushes, but we really will be making sure that we're trying to keep up with the sentiment in the community. All right, next one up I thought was really interesting. It just had to do with Microsoft and our deployment of Exchange. And this is from Steve. He says, does Microsoft still eat its own dog food? Is your internal Exchange environment as groundbreaking as it has been? And I know, Perry, you spend a lot of time on these types of things. So
yeah, well, it's kind of a cool question because, I think, in fact, the whole term dog food is something that Brian Valentine, when he ran Exchange, invented. So yes, we have a very robust dog food program. The builds that my whole team, the executives within Office all run on involve very early versions of the service. Sometimes we have conversations about how broadly you want to share it, and there's always people want to get in. I want to get in on dog food. And we're like, well, maybe you do not. Your temperament's an important part of that because there are some consequences. We do expect to find issues there. And we find a lot of issues there. So while we're doing that, it can have some impact on your day-to-day life. So it is something that we do. Changes get off of developers' check-ins and out to the cloud, sometimes in hours within dog food. We don't take those broadly to the rest of the world until we've gone through a very safe deployment program that involves making sure we've got enough time to validate at scale with human in the loop kind of time constants, so that while we're very confident about our monitoring and our testing stories, we also want to make sure that we catch the very rare black swan events as well, even if that finding out about that requires a phone call before we take that globally. It's still not perfect. We're constantly learning about that, but yeah. Dog food is still something that's on the bleeding edge. It's a key part of the culture, and I can't imagine a world in which it goes away.
Thank you, Perry. Well, just like that, I can't believe it, but our time is up. It has been such a pleasure to be with you here. This is my first time in Geek Out with Perry. Thank you for joining us. Now, of course, this is just the beginning of all that we have planned for you this week. We're really excited to have these Ask the Expert sessions, all of the sessions that will be presented for you to kind of get in with the experts. Again, it's not as good as being live. We recognize that. Stay tuned. More coming in the coming quarters and years. But we're excited to bring the Microsoft Exchange community back together. What an important time as we think about all that's going on in the world. So thank you so much for the partnership. We look forward to continuing to work with you, and we hope that you really enjoy the sessions that are coming up and take full advantage of them. Have a great rest of your day.